Um, okay. So good afternoon, everyone. I am Astha, and today, just a minute. Okay. So good morning, everyone. Today is our daily debate, and our debate topic is the use of tariffs a viable long-term strategy for reducing trade defects? So, for the debate, we have Jayant, and against going is Navya. So we will be starting debate. Jayant, if you can start with your opening statement. You have 3 minutes for the opening statement, and your time starts now.
I would start with my self count of 3, 2, and 1. Ladies and gentlemen, I rise fully in a fervent support of the motion that today use of tariff is a viable long-term strategy for reducing trade deficits. And I say this not out of ideological dogma, but because of undeniable historical precedent, real-world economic data, and the logic of national self-interest. Let's us begin with definition. A trade deficit occurs when a country's imports more than it exports, draining domestic wealth and weakening industrial self reliance. Tariffs, taxes on imports, serve as a corrective mechanism to restore equilibrium. Now consider the United States a prime example. Between 2001 and 2018, the US lost more than 3.7 million manufacturing jobs to China, according to the Economic Policy Institute. As a result of China's entry in the WTO and predatory trade practices, in response, Trump administration imposed tariffs on 370 billion US dollars worth of Chinese goods in 2018. The result, China's trade surplus with the US fell by nearly 17% in 2019. Notably, US trade deficit with China dropped from 419 billion USD to 345 billion USD in just 1 year. History too stands with tariffs. Look at 19th century America, under Alexander Hamilton's vision and the American system of Henry Clay, high tariffs protect nascent industries. The tariffs of 1828 and Morrill Tariff of 1861 laid the groundwork for US industrial supremacy. From 1870 to 1913, the US had average tariff above 40%, and yet it was world's fastest growing economy. And this is not just an American story. Let's talk about Japan. Post World War II, used tariffs and import controls in 1950 to 70s to shield industries like steel and automobiles. Result, Japan became a global industrial powerhouse. Let's take another example of South Korea. Under Park Chung-hee, imposed tariffs to nurture steel, POSCO, shipbuilding, and electronics sectors. Today, Samsung and Hyundai are household names worldwide. Let's take another example of Germany. Under Otto von Bismarck, used trade tariffs to protect agriculture and emerging industries, building economic nationalism alongside unification. Contrary to neoliberal orthodoxy, the World Bank and even Harvard economist Danny Roderick acknowledge that selective protectionism under the right institutional frameworks has succeeded in reducing dependency and boosting export in long term. Now, skeptics argue that tariffs hurt consumers. But what hurts a nation more? Cheaper foreign goods or loss of entire industry, job, skills, and national resilience? A short term price rise is a small price to pay for a long term industrial sovereignty. I say tariffs aren't just taxes, they are investments in self sustaining, surplus generating future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Navya, if you can start with your opening statement.
Just give me a minute. Just give me a minute. Yeah. Should I start? Okay. I would like to start on the self count of 3, 2, 1. When goods don't cross borders, soldiers will. These words by Frederick Bastiat capture the essence of peaceful and productive international cooperation. Tariffs, by design, are taxes on imports, and while they may be dressed as shields for domestic industries, in truth, they are a direct blow to the customer. When governments impose tariffs, the increased costs are not absorbed by foreign exporters. They pass on to very people within the imposing country. Prices rise, inflation creeps in, and average household is left paying more for less. In 2018, US tariffs on washing machines led to an average price hike of 12%, hurting middle class households the most. Tariffs are not a protective shield, they are a tax on the people. But the damage does not end there. Tariffs ignite retaliation. They are rarely met with silence. The infamous US China trade war is a living example. As each country escalated tariff measures, supply chains fractured, prices soared, and industries on both sides suffered. Billions of dollars were lost, trust was eroded, and after all the economic warfare, America's trade deficit remained largely unchanged. If that is considered a viable strategy, then we must redefine what viable truly means. History speaks volume. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930 escalated global trade tensions and deepened the Great Depression. Fast forward to 2018, the US China trade war, sparked by tariffs, resulted in US dollar 300 plus billion in mutual tariffs, job losses, and rising consumer prices. The trade deficit, it still grew. Furthermore, the belief that trade deficits are inherently negative is flawed one. A trade deficit often reflects a nation's strong consumption patterns or capital attractiveness. The US has run a trade deficit for decades and yet leads to innovation, investment, and global influence. The simplistic narrative is that a trade deficit equals economic failures, ignores the complexity of the global trade dynamics. Tariffs also cripples domestic industries in indirect yet significant ways. In today's world, manufacturing is globally interconnected. A single car may be designed in Japan, assembled in India, and powered by semiconductors from Taiwan. When tariffs disrupt the flow of parts and materials, it's domestic manufacturers who face higher costs, production delays, and reduced competitiveness. So I ask, are tariffs a viable long-term solution, or they just a reactive tool that masks deepened issues? If a nation wishes to genuinely address its trade imbalance, the focus should be on boosting domestic productivity, encouraging innovation, forging fair multi-trade agreements, and investing in human capital. These are not quick fixes, but they are the sustainable ones. In conclusion, tariffs may not seem like an assertive move on the surface, but beneath lies a policy of economic isolation, consumer punishment, and strategic short sightedness. They do not solve the problem, they delay its reckoning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Navya. So now we have done with the opening statements. The next round will be of the rebuttals. As we have decided before, it will be 4 minutes. And I'm going to give you 3 minutes time for your rebuttals. And I'm going to pause the recording for now, and then we'll start with the rebuttals. Starting the recording. Okay. Jayant, if you can start with your rebuttals.
Okay, I would be starting with my self count of 3, 2, and 1. The use of tariffs is a viable long term strategy for reducing trade deficits. Navya and respected judge, let me be crystal clear. Every argument made against tariffs is either a misrepresentation, outdated dogma, or a simply wrong. And I will now dismantle them fact by fact, brick by brick. Claim 1 says tariffs hurt consumers by raising prices. True, in short term, prices may rise marginally, but what's never mentioned is the long term gain. The US steel tariffs of 2018 raised domestic prices by just 2.5%, yet received the domestic industry, bringing 800 plus jobs back to Granite City alone. A National Bureau of Economic Research study showed that net welfare loss to consumer from Trump's China tariff was just 1.4 billion, while the long-term benefit to manufacturing capacity was over 8 billion USD. Manufacturing wages is protected sector rose faster than the national average, 4.5% versus 3.2%. So I asked, is a slightly more expensive washing machine worse than an entire city losing its industry? This argument fails to grasp the real human cost of deindustrialization. Claim number two, tariffs lead to trade wars that harm everyone. Tariffs aren't act of war, they are act of economic negotiation. Consider the US-China tariff battle resulted in the phase one trade deal in 2020, where China committed to buying 200 billion USD more in US goods over 2 years. Soybean export to China jumped 78% in just 1 year. The US regained 23 billion USD in agricultural exports. In fact, 50 plus WTO countries use retaliatory tariffs routinely, not to destroy out the balance power in trade talks. If China can subsidize, the US can protect agriculture, and India can guard electronics. Why is it only a war when we defend ourselves? Claim number four, tariff reduce exports and harm innovation. History proved that the opposite. South Korea's POSCO, Hyundai, and Samsung were built behind tariff walls. Today, Korea is the sixth largest exporter globally. India protected its pharmaceutical industry post 1970s. Today, it supplies 60% of the global vaccines and 20% of global generics. After Indonesia imposed nickel export tariffs, it built an EV battery industry, now exporting to Tesla, LG, and CATL. Tariff build value chains, not barrier, launchpads. Claim number five, tariffs are outdated. Really? The EU launched CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, in 2023, a green tariff to push polluting imports. The US CHIPS Act uses tariff like incentives to build domestic semiconductor production. India raised tariffs on China, toys, and electronics, and how boasts a 250% growth in local production in just 3 years. Brazil, Indonesia, Vietnam, even France and Germany are turning to strategic tariffs. If tariffs were outdated, the entire G20 did not get the memo. To my opponent, if tariffs are such a failure, then why do every single advanced economy, let it be US, China, Germany, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, still use them to build and defend industry? Because tariffs are not relies, they are weapons of economic sovereignty. Tariffs work. They worked for Hamilton's America, for Meiji's Japan, for post-war Germany, for Deng's China, and for Modi's India. They reduce trade deficits, rebuild industry, restore jobs, and reclaim control. I don't just reject your arguments, I crush them with facts. Thank you.
Navya, do you want to?
Can I begin?
Yes.
3, 2, 1. Jayant began with a countdown, and proximally so, because what followed was an economic ticking time bomb of flawed logics. First, let's talk about Granite City. Yes, 800 steel jobs were revived. But what about, but What Jayan didn't tell you is that 3 lakh jobs in steel using industries faced higher input costs. The Peterson Institute found that for every steel job saved, 16 were lost elsewhere. That's not revival, that's economic cannibalism. Second, he cherry picked 2.5% price hikes for the US Federal Reserve, reported far broader inflationary pressures due to tariff across household goods, electronics, and autos. When family pays more and farmer face retaliation tariffs, is that a long-term gain or a national subsidy for a short-term headlines? He calls my facts outdated dogma. Let me remind you, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. The smooth helvet tariff and 2018 trade war shows the same pattern. Retaliation, job losses, no change in the trade deficit. And finally, the National Bureau of Economic Research did indeed analyze welfare losses and concluded that tariffs reduce national income, particularly for the working class, negating any job gains. So, yes, Jayan built his case brick by brick, but unfortunately, it's a wall made of half truths, economic tunnel visions, and historical misleads. I do not deny the flaws in global trade, but I refuse to solve tomorrow's problem with yesterday's weapon. Protection is a philosophy of war. Free trade is a philosophy of peace. Worthy proposition has spoken like a historian stuck in the amber of the 19th century. But today, we are not debating economic fossils, we are debating 21st century global strategy. And I rise proudly in opposition to the belief that tariffs are a viable long term solution to trade deficits. Proposition walked us through 2001 to 18, painting China's WTO entry as the villain behind the US job losses. But let's inject same modern clarity here. 85% of US manufacturing job losses weren't due to the trade. They were due to automation. That's not my opinion. It's conclusion of Ball State University, MIT, and McKinsey Global Institute. So, let me ask you, how do you fight robots with tariffs? They also pointed out the 19th century American tariff regime, where the US imposed duties as high as 40%. But that was an era with no internet, no global value chains, no international trade laws. But then America had no choice. Today we have better ones. Using 1800s logic in 2025 debate is like fixing an iPhone with a steam engine. Let us talk about his examples. Steel and automobiles. He said tariffs protect these industries, but post 2018, steel tariffs, 5 jobs were lost for every one saved. The automobile industry, General Motors closed 5 plants, citing higher input costs. Even America's farmers suffered, caught in retaliation tariffs. That's not protecting, that's an economic self harm. Proposition argues that the trade deficit is evil, but a trade deficit is not a debt. It is not bankruptcy. It just simply means a country's imports are more than its exports. The US has trade deficit for 47 years and still leads in innovation, technology, and defense. Why? Because investors trust it. A trade deficit can signal economic confidence, not failure. Let me now reclaim history since they seem to be so fond of it. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930 raised tariffs to protect US industries. The result, a 66% collapse in the global trade, retaliations from allies, and worsening the Great Depression. Tariffs did not save the economy, they buried it. Even Trump's 2018 China tariffs meant to by fixing the deficit did not work. By 2020, the US trade deficit has actually grown. Consumers paid billions more, and manufacturing job did not return.
Okay, time is
That's
up. Time is up. Time is up.
Can I conclude just ending statement?
Okay.
To the opposition, I say this: not all economic battles are won with walls. Some are won with bridges of innovation, cooperation, and of forward vision. And tariffs, they burn those bridges. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, Jayant, if you can if you can start with your closing statement, which is of 2 minutes, go on.
Navya Singh and respected jury, Asta Dhruva. Let me close not with an opinion, but with the raw, unacceptable truth. Tariffs are not just viable, they are essential. They are the spine of every economic superpower in history. Dr. Ha Jung Chang from Cambridge University proved in Kicking Away the Ladder in 2002 that every rich country used tariffs only to ban them once they reached the top. The US, UK, and Germany industrialized behind high walls. Free trade came after, not before. Nobel laureate Joseph Stiglitz wrote in Globalization and its disconnects revisited in 2017. Trade liberalization without strategic protection has devastated developing economies. Tariffs are critical in nurturing infant industries. Here are some facts. The US China tariff from 2018 to 2020 cut the US trade deficit with China by 88 billion USD, while bringing back half a million jobs back in manufacturing and mining by USTR report 2020. India's electronics tariff transformed a 21 billion import bill into a 101 billion production ecosystem in under a decade. Indonesia's 2020 nickel export ban birthed a domestic EV battery empire with 30 billion foreign direct investment and now supplies Tesla and CATL. Even Adam Smith in The Wealth of Nations 1776 wrote, "It may be advantageous to impose tariffs when they secure an industry essential to nation's defense. Today's world is not free. It's a jungle of subsidies, dumping, and tech espionage. China gave 160 billion USD in industrial subsidies in 2021. The EU pays 58 billion euros per year in agricultural protection. The US Farm Bill allocates 428 billion USD in subsidies over 10 years. If everyone is paying strategic, then unilateral free trade isn't idealism, it's economic suicide. So I leave you with this. Would you fight with bare hands when every rival is armed? Or would you surrender your factories, jobs, and future just to obey the theories that never worked in practice? Tariffs are not tools of isolation, they are instruments of restoration. They don't close borders, they open doors to self resilience, dignity, and growth. And that is why the use of tariff is not viable, it's a vital. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jayant. Navya, if you can start with your closing statement.
All right, I would start on the self count of 3, 2, 1. When a house is on fire, you don't block the doors. You find the source of the flames. Yet today, the proposition wants us to slam shut the doors on global trades using tariffs as firewalls. Let me be clear: tariffs do not extinguish the fire; they suffocate the future. Tariffs are not policy; They are panic, they are economic painkiller with long-term side effects used when what we really need is a cure. Proposition says that tariff bring back home jobs, but what they actually bring are higher consumer prices, literary barriers, and global distrust. Steel tariffs, 5 jobs lost for everyone saved. Farmers hit hardest, and US China tariffs, they did not reduce the deficit, they expanded it. So, what should we do instead? First, we must boost global domestic production, invest in education, upskilling, infrastructure. So, American labor is globally competitive. Second, support innovation, pour resources into AI, green technology, advanced manufacturing. Third, negotiate smarter trade deals multilaterally, use platforms like G20, WTO. That's how trade partners accountable through law, not words. And finally, embrace global supply chains strategically, not fearfully. Because in today's world, economic strength lies in integration, not isolation. Tariffs aren't the backbone of superpowers, they are outdated crutches. Countries involved beyond them, like relying on protectionism, like using leeches instead of modern medicine. Counterproductive and stuck in parts when the only solution we need are modern medicines. Let us not retreat its protectism. Let us rise with innovation, global cooperation, and smart strategy. Yes, I'm done.
Okay. So, if, right. So, at the end of the debate, I have to give you some feedback and I will announce the winner. So, I'll just start with the opening statements from both of you. So, for Jayant, let's start from you. Opening statement. I love the evidence that you gave in your speech of the opening statement. You can bring more pauses between your sentences. That makes your sentence more clear, is something I would say. But during the opening statement, you were definitely the strongest candidate right now. Navya, in your opening statement, you had great persuasive language. You could bring more evidence in your opening statement, maybe. Now let's get to the rebuttals. Now, for the rebuttals, I thought Navya was much stronger candidate because she, in the rebuttals, brought more evidence. She had good persuasive language again, and the break between the sentences was good, so the sentences were more clear. As for Jayant, the case studies that you presented in your rebuttals were very clear, and the evidence was very strong in Jayant's rebuttals. In closing statement, I think both of you did equally well. Maybe something that you could integrate more is time control, because I let it slide, but maybe you guys were going more than 10 seconds more than your given time frame. So that's something you both can improve on. And for the closing statements, you both used direct address. You provided solutions. I think Navya was the one who provided the solutions. And then Jayant brought in more evidence in the closing statement as well. That's why I think it's a tie. Both of you, I know it's sad that it's a tie, but both of you did very well. And I hope the feedback is helpful to both of you. What do you think?
That's pretty
All right.
wonderful.
First of all, we both are sad that it's a
I know.
tie.
I'm sorry, but I think the opening statements, Jen did very well. Rebuttals, I think you did much better. And then in closing statement, both of you did very well. So like I was very stuck, maybe.
Yeah, I
Okay.
understand.
Okay. So if you can join in
So,
tomorrow, maybe someone can win. If that happens, you can take revenge tomorrow, if that happens. So I will
This
be
is already the revenge.
you can
This
join.
is the revenge. I mean,
are you having any other, like, any other, what we say?
What? Any other word?
I just forgot the word.
Any other
Feedback?
feedback?
Yeah. Any other feedback from either your side or either from Navya's side?
Navya, if you want to start, I'm fine with it. I don't have any feedback to give more.
No, like it was really fun.
Yeah.
Like the last time I debated with Jayan to this time, it's like much better.
Yeah.
The arguments more strong, the
Mhm.
evidence is much more clear. So yeah, good job, Jayan.
Jen, do you want to give
Thanks.
any advice to Navya?
Yeah,
Like
just
I
yeah.
just wanted to add that your opening and rebuttal was very strong, but in the closing statement, like a little bit, as I added some fact, but to rebuttal my closing statement also, instead of adding fact, you use your persuasive language more in the closing statement.
Noted.
That's why I was very much stuck because both of you, Jen provided more evidence, and he had, I think, what did he have? He had a direct address.
Like,
Navya
first of
was,
all,
yeah, go on, go on.
after seeing my facts that I would be speaking, I was like, I am gonna win. But after her persuasive skills, I was like, she ate the argument. I'm not gonna win. She's
Exactly.
very persuasive and
That's why it's a tie. I think both of you have your own strong points which are like clashing, and I can't be biased towards one. So,
Yeah.
also,
I
yeah,
also thought that it might be a tie.
yeah. Also something I would advise both of you is maybe bring in like more recent incidents because in America the tariffs have been a very crucial debate right now. So one that comes in my mind is the stock market. The stock market is crashing
yeah,
because of that, and there are predictions from the Economic Times about it, and they are both the strengths and weaknesses. So
yeah.
you can refer that more because it's a recent incident. Recent predictions can be very good in your
I
debate.
I thought Navya would be referring to them because
Yeah.
it's speaking from her side. But
There are.
from my
Mhm.
my reference point, as tariffs are backfiring US in today's days, so I
Yeah.
thought instead of including today's days, let's just bind the history back, and which included strongly supported my argument, but Navya didn't add it today's date.
I know,
But
and the things I have been reading, there have been strengths and weaknesses for both, so you can add in both of your points basically. That's my what do you call it, feedback to you, to both of you, basically.
yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
So if you guys enjoyed today's debate, you can join in tomorrow as well. We have a lot of competitions coming up. You can participate in that to polish your MEN skills. And I will end the meeting here. It was a fun time. Thank you so much. And make sure you take the revenge tomorrow, both of you, from each other. And I'll end the meeting here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.